So, Ashish, it's so wonderful to have you on filmishilmy.com and heartiest congratulations on Court Kacheri on Sony LIV. I'm very excited for the series. When anything is backed by TVF, you just know it's going to be a really great watch and a fun watch. So, as excited as I am and as we are, I'm sure you must have been just as excited when you were offered the show as well.
Yes, yes. With TVF, they're known to make brands shows which are very rooted and very. They have a very big audience base, and there's a strong connection with the audiences that they already have, and the kind of stories which they tell, they're very heart touching. So it was always. I wanted to collaborate with TVF. In fact, about 10 years before, I had done a show with TVF called The Inmates, TVF
Hmm.
Inmates.
Yeah.
So one more collaboration was long due. It took me almost a decade to get that.
Hmm. And you know, one thing that I've loved about your work, Ashish, is that you've always represented the voice of the common man. You know, in all the series, all the films that you've been a part of, you've always represented that uh that hustle of life, but in a very sort of light-hearted kind of ish way. And I love the way that you've really had that knack, and I think you seem to do that here in Court Kacheri as well. How has that balance been like for you as an actor, actually, is getting that right rhythm of showcasing reality and the hardship and the struggle, but at the same time maintaining that bit of a light tone towards your craft as well?
That's what I believe. Like there should be a certain degree of perk to the characters which I do. That's what makes it interesting. Otherwise, it gets boring. So whenever I get a part, I ensure that I leave a part of me um, in it and somehow try to make it an extension of my personality.
Hmm.
Whatever that I can bring in the character, that I try to, and otherwise it becomes very predictable and the same, the usual. So try to make it as different as it can be. Try to break all the cliches that we see or imagine. Like even like if we talk very court kacheri specific, courtroom dramas, we have an imagination of it. How courtrooms are shown in films, we've seen that. They're very stereotypical, right? The
Hmm.
way they've been portrayed. So I consciously try to stay away from that and try to make it very relatable to the audience. Like it should feel as if they've either it's them or they've seen people like that.
Hmm. No, very well said. And I'm glad you mentioned about the whole courtroom drama aspect because I feel like in Indian cinema especially, like courtroom dramas are very like heavy. You know, they're always very heavy, they're always emotionally intense, and rightly so, because the situations that are dealt with in courtrooms are often of that nature. But here I really like the fact that it's kind of peppered with comedy. It's more focused on a father and son dynamic and how that courtroom in a way is like a metaphor for their relationship. It's almost like unki sunwai ho rahi hai, through their
That's
dynamic.
very well put. That's exactly how it is.
Yeah,
So it's the backdrop. The backdrop is of that the legal setup. There's also a metaphor of a jail. If you see in the trailer, how the
yeah,
son says
exactly.
that I feel like I'm stuck. That's my life. I'm stuck and waiting for justice to happen. Whatever justice is, whatever right is, whatever wrong is. So at a lot of levels, it's very metaphorical. The entire setup. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I was gonna say is how why do you think that we've kind of had courtroom dramas portrayed in this way, actually, like very intense, very serious? Because if you look in the West, for example, they've had like Orange is the New Black or Suits, for example, which kind of, have, I mean, it's quite intense as well. They have their moments of intensity, it's no doubt, but they're mostly very comedic and they're mostly very easy breezy to watch, where you can just switch off and just put on. So, what do you think it is about our style of storytelling in India that's kind of made it a lot more intense to watch?
I believe as makers, we often have a tendency of to fall into patterns. If there's certain thing which works, that often goes on repetition for a very, very long time. So when there was a phase of a horror comedy, so that horror comedy was just every other movie was a horror comedy. But when it comes to legal dramas, no, we have good examples also. We have examples of Jolly LLB.
Yeah, true. Oh yeah, true, true, true. Yeah.
So this Jolly LLB, this Jolly LLB 2, they're going to make Jolly LLB 3, you know. So
Mm.
things are also in that space. But yeah, but more often than not, people usually stick to cartoons because they're safer. That's what people are used to see.
Yes. It's interesting though, isn't it? Because you did a role in Article 15 where
Mhm.
you're playing an officer in Article 15.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how, that film, the tonality was very different, but yet you were playing someone who's a gatekeeper of the law. And now you're playing a gatekeeper of the law here, but the tone again is different. The lens is very different. How would you say your perspective on legal gatekeeping and playing responsible roles of the law has evolved over time?
Wow. Uh, I I don't know. Like I played as per what is offered to me on paper. So uh, Article 15 is a totally different story. Even though I'm playing a cop, uh, uh, but my take on the entire thing is very different. I'm willingly doing that job. I love my job there. I want to bring about a change in the system, or eventually that's what I try to do. Here it's more like a reluctant lawyer.
Hmm.
It's more like a lost kid who does not know where he belongs in this world, what he wants to do. He's not sure, but he's very sure what he does not want to do. That is, he does not want to become a lawyer. So they're very, very different characters. Uh, Here, since my mother is also a lawyer, by the way.
Oh, nice.
So, and I come from a family of lawyers. My grandfather was also a lawyer. So, a lot of things I knew. I knew the legal world very well. I know how courts are run. I know how actual courts are as compared to how they are portrayed in films and shows.
Hmm.
So, which was kind of easy because I know the world. And I just try to portray it with that authenticity, which I had seen.
I think that really comes across now that you've mentioned it, actually, because I'm sure that must have really been a useful asset for you to kind of know the fact that you've come from that world, you're aware of it. Because see, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because the challenge of an actor usually is you're supposed to do different things and you're supposed to mold yourself into different worlds. But I think having that sense of familiarity does help sometimes, especially in a show like this, which is so steeped in reality. I think it really does help to have that awareness of, well, the actual authenticity, but the situations happening in the legal field, right? So that must have been useful for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course, it's very important because either like where do you pick up? How do you make a character? You see references, you see things happening around your life. You try to bring your personality in it. Or if you've been in situations like I did a role called in a show called Sasbo Flamingo. I don't know whether you've seen
Yes.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
of
I'm
course.
a drug addict. I've never done drugs in my life. But I had references. I'd seen people tripping. I had watched some films which I believe were pretty authentic on how I saw a lot of YouTube videos on it. So similarly, like you gather information, you gather as much material as you can. Something the script provides you, something is your personality, your lived experiences, and other is acquired stuff which you see around. And that's how you build the character. But now, since my mom was a lawyer, I this world was so familiar because there was a stenographer always at my home. There were many lawyers coming at my mom's house was the office. Our home was the office.
Hmm.
So I had access to everything there. So like I was not very sure what I want to do. I was very sure about what I do not want to do. I
Right.
do not want to portray it in a very filmy way, how it's always seen.
Hmm.
Not to say it's bad, but that's done to death. I just wanted to do it slightly differently.
Hmm. Right. Rightly said. But I can't help but, Ashish, look at your filmography and the sort of work that you've had. There's always a sense of social undertones to your work. Um, I don't think there's ever a show that you've done which is like easy breezy, completely, social message free. And I know entertainment is supposed to be, I mean, cinema is supposed to be an art of and a medium of entertainment, of course, no doubt about it. But what exactly um what exactly has driven you to really take up these social issue themes? Is this something you've consciously done, or do you think because you've done a few things and they've worked, So then that's why casting directors have found you convenient for such roles. I mean, what do you think has really panned out in terms of the social undertones that you've done?
I do not think it's a conscious choice. It's not like कि इसी तरीके का मुझे करना है. It's not like that.
Hmm.
This happened to fall into my lap. Like Bhavesh Joshi's Superhero. That film came. That's talking about the water mafia. Then the caste system, Article 15 came.
Hmm.
Now Court Kacheri is there. So they just
Had
happened to
Helmet.
fall.
You had Helmet as well, actually, which was about like,
This helmet, too. Yeah, this helmet too. Uh, uh, so they just happened. But um, I think because cinema is such a powerful medium, no, the reach is so big, so like it's the number of people who consume your films or your shows, the audience is so wide. Like I believe at times it's very important, like if such films which can make an impact on how people think and feel and behave in their lives. I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to take a moral high ground here कि सारी फिल्में वैसी ही बननी चाहिए
hmm.
because for education there's schools. So
Hmm.
we cannot burden cinema for everything to educate the society, you know. But at the same time, it's very important for such films to be backed.
Hmm. Yeah, very, very rightly said. But I think also a big major segment that I want to talk about here is the father-son dynamic. In Court Kacheri, as I might have touched on earlier in our chat. I think it's very fascinating because I feel like, we've moved away from the whole, father-son enmity, ego clashing, masculinity clashing. We've moved away from that. Here it just seems more of a question of understanding each other. It's more emotional and mental at the same time. It's kind of like dark humor in its own way as well because of the dysfunctionality that's there. I really like that because I think it's so refreshing to see something like that, on the series front and on the film front. I think for you to explore this dynamic, how important is it to kind of give this emotional sort of spin on father-son dynamics. It's like, for example, in Sayara recently, I don't know if you've seen the film, they had the dysfunctional father and son relationship in that, but yet it was very gentle, in which they had the pain. It was very simmering pain. It was intense, but yet it was still quite, hopeful in its approach. So how
And
important is that, I think in this representation in today's day and age?
like I'll tell you, in my experience, like I've seen this dynamic in every other household. If that was not my story though, my story was a very supportive, peaceful, loving household. Uh, I always see a sense of undercurrent tension, unresolved issues, a lot of silences between children and parents, in which because of our आंख की शर्म and the culture की बात नहीं करनी है, लड़ना नहीं है, उल्टा जवाब नहीं देना है, so घर में बातें नहीं होती है. People do not talk, which leads to a lot of baggage, and it comes out in different forms as rebellion, as total blockage of communication. Uh, in this story, it's so beautifully written, the entire crisis. If you look at it from the son's point of view, the son is justified. He wanted a father, not just a provider. Probably all he wants is a hug or just a pat on the back. Beta, well done. Yeah, I'm there. From the father's point of view, he's a single parent. He does not know any other way. He's also trying, struggling, and learning. So that's what makes it very beautiful. And just to portray that sensitivity in those silences, in those moments, in those eye contacts and the sudden breaking of that, in those the hand about to go for a hug and just restraining. That's the beauty of the script. And about feelings and how an eventual healing happens or maybe not. So it's very sensitive, and so it was supposed to be portrayed very sensitively.
Hmm. Yeah, nicely said. I think why I really like Court Kacheri because for a while, I think I've been so exhausted by the by the intensity that we've been seeing in some of the contents on OTT. I feel like there's just literally been such an influx of lust and drugs and crime and all these horrendous things that I
Mhm.
feel like, our minds as audiences have kind of, in a way, been pushed into that zone, a lot, where in a way, we've been conditioned to thinking, acha, ye ho raha hai. Oh, this is good. In a way, I mean, don't get me wrong. I get that art sometimes is there to repulse as well. That's also a really important aspect of art. But, कभी कभी ऐसा महसूस होता था कि यार काश कोई ट्रेडिशनल सी चीज आ जाए, something that's rooted in its
Yeah.
approach that you can watch with your family. कब तक हम छुप छुप के मतलब अपने स्क्रीन्स पे ये सब कुछ देखेंगे. And I feel like Court Kacheri in a way is a very breath of fresh air, because obviously TV have done such a great job with Panchayat, and we know how popular Panchayat has gotten. Um, and with this series on Sony Live, I definitely do think that there's a potential for it to really blossom. But I want to get your perspective on it. Sorry, Ashish. What do you think about the influx of OTT content where it is just going way too Western in a way that's kind of omitting its Indian roots and traditionalism? Because I feel like being rooted to culture and tradition isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just it has to be in balance with today's day and age. So how do you feel about that in terms of the influx of content we've been seeing on OTT?
Yeah, like right now, the amount of shows and films which are getting made, it's the the volume is so much, and the length is getting altered. Now there are 30 minute, 20 minutes, apparently 5 minute episodes which are getting made as micro series. So the format is continuously evolving. Now, what has happened is because of social media, the audience themselves have become creators now.
Hmm.
People consume reels. So when they consume reels, they've got the whole world in their hand. And a reel is a minute long or probably less. So they just keep on scrolling, and they're constantly bombarded with so much uh, information, so much stimulation is happening. So to hold the attention of the audience, it's getting very difficult right now. As far as uh, the kind of content which is getting made, the fact that you mentioned that there's a rhythm, there's a slow pace to it, there's a human drama to it. So it's very important for such stories to be made, because right now what is happening is people do not have that attention span. लोग एक शो देखने के बीच में 10 बार अपना फोन चेक करते हैं. So it's very important that you make something which is very engaging. But that does not mean that that needs to resort to uh, over dramatic stuff, violence, or any other stuff. I strongly believe if the story is good, if the story has some merit, and if it's told with all honesty and honesty, it would reach. Then you don't need to resort to either copying what is being made in the West or how it's being made in the West. Because if you look at our Indian stories, our Indian cultural heritage, this is a plethora. मतलब हमारी कहानियां जो हैं,
Hmm.
it's outstanding. Now Ramayana is getting made. This talks about Mahabharata being made. So we have told it all. It's all there. We just need to tap. So like stories like Tumbad. There was a film called Tumbad, if you've seen.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
There's so much folklore which is already there in the Indian culture. So many interesting subjects. There's a filmmaker called Rahi Ranal Barve. He made Tumbad. Beautiful subjects he's been making there.
Hmm. No, you're right, absolutely, and I think that this gives me very hope, a lot of hope actually, because I think I love this idea of we're seeing stories, and I think also it's important that artists like yourself, like Pavan sir, who's been, I mean, he's been in this industry for so long, and he's had such great work in his filmography, and I think because of OTT as well, he's done some great work on
Yeah.
OTT space as well, and I think that really kind of, in a way, marked a big milestone in his career, as I'm sure it has with you as well. So in a way, I think that's the best thing that OTT for me, what had has done is, in a way, it's given recognition to actors who would otherwise be, um, go unnoticed, in the mainstream cinema front, and I think that's the one good thing that I have found. Is it a sigh of relief for you as well? The
Yes, because what's happened with OTT space, especially like people who look a certain way, who are not classically hero looking, they get to play parts which usually Indian films do not allow them to play. And suddenly, when there's a web series which is about 8 episodes, 1 hour each, 40 minutes each, there's so many characters in it, and the graphs to each and every one of them. And so you get to live a life, you get to live the whole uh, emotional up and down. Uh, Someone like a TVF has been making shows like Panchayat, Pictures, Tripling, Permanent Roommates, and the people that they cast, they're they're just people who are so relatable, like people that you can identify with, who do not have to look in a classically good-looking way. So OTT has that's a revolution, which the OTT revolution which came that gave a new lease of life to us.
Hmm. Amazing. Right. So let's just say on a final note, a court kacheri is your case. And the audience is your judge. If you had to make a plea to the judge, what would that plea be for the show?
I think it's a very, very relatable show for parents, for children, for people of all ages. The stories, the it's from at which point, at what point in your life you're looking, you are, and you'll find your meaning in the show. If you're a parent, you'll relate with the father. If you're a child, if the son or the daughter, you relate with Param, my character. And it also challenges the notion of black and white, what is right, what is wrong. There are a lot of grays in life. That's how life is. It's about those undertones. It's about those gray areas. That's what the show talks about, and that's what makes it beautiful. That's how life is, right? It's not
Hmm.
always Masai and Galant. And there's a lot of comedy in it. There's lots and lots of drama and aankhein nam hone wale moments, and uh, it'll leave a smile at your face, on your face, eventually.
Incredible. Well, look, Ashish, thank you so much for joining me on Filme Shilmy. It's been so lovely to chat with you, and really looking forward to seeing the reactions coming in for the series, and wishing you all the very best for any upcoming projects that you may have.
Likewise, it's lovely talking to you, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.